to your wealth of knowledge, and we are on the subject of flexibility. While we're on the subject of flexibility, has your dieting needs been flexible? We're in the kitchen, all right? Are you able to find a healthy snack that can get you through? You thought Mr. Shoemaker was kidding. Frozen grapes are #1. Frozen grapes. Find something that you can eat. Might be sweet, but won't put a lot of calories in your diet, so you can have a healthy body composition, and you can make sure your cardiovascular system is staying healthy, and you can get out, exercise, and do what you want to do with the proper fuel. All right, so we learned flexibility, and flexibility is the ability of your joints to move through their full range of motion. What moves your joints? Well, your muscles, of course. So the limberness of your muscles and the ability to function at their maximum capacity is what determines your flexibility. And how do we increase flexibility is going to be one of the areas we talk about today. And also, what kind of things do we do to test your flexibility? Well, you guys, you 8th graders, had the beginning of the fitness test last year, and then the second part we never got to because of the whole COVID-19 thing. You 7th graders haven't had any this year, but you had it back in 5th grade, and we're going to talk briefly up front here about some of the tests that we do for our fitness gram that test the flexibility of young women and young men like yourself. The first thing that comes to mind is we do the sit and reach. The sit and reach is where you are sitting flat on the ground, your feet are against a box, a platform device, and you reach out as far as you can and push a lever to see how far you can reach. Test the flexibility of our hamstrings, part of our calf muscles, especially right behind the leg. There's where it gets a little tight for me. And tells us, in our lower back too a little bit, the flexibility of how far we can go. Usually the young ladies perform better than the young men on this test. That's not an always, guys, but usually. That's the way it is. I've had some guys that can knock it out of the park too, but it's much more frequent that it's a young lady that does that kind of thing. The second one that comes to mind is the trunk lift test. And the trunk lift test, all right, you lay flat, face down on the ground with your legs out behind you, and while keeping your legs on the ground, you lift your trunk as high as you can and try to see how flexible your spinal cord, really your spine and your lower back muscles and the muscles that control. So the erector spinae we got there. We also got the lats, the rhomboids, the traps, everything that works the spine. How much flexibility we're maintaining in that. And that will get a measurement from the ground to the bottom of our chin. And again, usually my experience is guys perform a little better at this, but the girls are still a bit better with the flexibility aspect of it. And the key to remember is all of this stuff becomes inflexible because of America and our nature to do exactly what all three of us are doing right here. Sitting in a chair. If you are raised in a society where you squat more, you don't sit down in a chair. I know in China, there's a lot of open spaces and people just gather and they squat. Africa, a lot of places like that, people will squat in public. There's not really a seat. India, the same thing. Many places around the world, they still get together. They're walking, hey, let's take a break. They do squat down in that complete squat stance. And again, Mr. Shoemaker showed you last time, all right? Oh, I get about right there. But if you're in a perfect spot, they get the butt all the way down. They're sitting there like it's nothing, hanging out, boom. And they can sit there for hours on end. And I watched some of you guys do that in class. But we don't do that here in America. Sit in a chair. Mr. Bornhibig, Mr. Mitchell sitting in chairs. All right? When you eat dinner, I assume you guys, like myself, eat at a dinner table. When you are at school, you're working on a desk. All right? All those, plus many more, sitting in a car, you name it, all those tend to not have us use our muscles the way they're intended, and we tend to shorten up on our flexibility. So, we test, is your back, if you're typing at a desk, or you're writing at a desk, well, your back might become a little imbalanced. So, are you able to move your back in a complete function? All right, you're sitting in a chair. Well, if I sat in a chair, that's all I did, or on the couch, my hamstring never gets any farther than that. It doesn't go backwards. So a lot of people lose flexibility in their hamstrings. And the back is a big one, the lower back. That's the biggest one, sitting here, all right? Because I'm sitting on my weight, my spine is compressed because now my buttocks is the weight-bearing point as opposed to my heels, and that compresses my lower spine and shortens my erector spinae, and it's a major issue in our country. Mr. Mitchell, you also performed the 7th grade fitness test. What other things do you have to say about the 7th grade fitness test?
I always find that most kids can do the trunk lift. And most of them get very close to the 12 inches is what you need to rise up like a cobra snake and get that, get your chin, you gotta keep it straight, but get
not using your hands.
Right there, 12 inch. I usually find that most of the kids can do it. I'd say like at least 80%. However, I got to agree with you, Mr. Shoemate, when it comes to the sit and reach box, the boys, I'd say maybe 50, and I'm being generous. 50% of the boys can pass the sit and reach box. Girls, 90%, easily. I got girls who can do, they can go to the very, very end of the box, which is like 20 some odd inches. No problem whatsoever. I got boys who can barely even touch the box. I'm just saying, guys, and I'm right there too. And you put me in a sit and reach box, I'll be reaching trying to just get 1 inch, I'm telling you. But that's just the name of the game. Girls are more flexible than boys.
Isn't there a song called the Rubber Band Man? Yeah. Rubber Band Man. Well, maybe we should call it the Rubber Band Woman.
I don't know. It's too early for me to whistle, but
and
I'm getting close here.
How about what do you call it? The trunk lift? Isn't that like a seal?
I'm telling you, he's begging for it.
Too early in the video, but yeah, I mean, those things are tough. I mean, you know, you got to work on flexibility. So
you do.
I don't teach 7th grade very often. I have done those tests. Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Shoemaker have done them a lot more with a lot more students. But I would agree. I would say 90% of girls can have a lot of success on the sit and reach. Anything flexibility wise. Guys, yeah, 40-50%. Yeah, pass the sit and reach.
And that's why, I mean, Mr. Shoemaker's going to talk about this in a minute or so, but that's why we're doing these videos, kids. That's why we're doing these yoga videos. That's why we're doing these flexibility videos. Mr. Shoemaker, agreed?
Absolutely. We do mobility every day in my class.
Yes.
Yoga, mobility, flexibility. That is to make sure that our joints are moving to a full range of motion. That's to make sure that all the sitting, the extra sitting that you guys are doing, and I know we're doing, that we don't have a detriment and lose out on that. Now, does that mean that if you're stiff as a board, you can't touch past your knees, that you won't be able to touch your toes? No, it doesn't mean that. You just have to start building that flexibility, slowly but surely. Before we get there, though, a couple of my kids did a flexibility. It was kind of a challenge. We did it, and to see who could kick their leg the highest. And we got people that can kick vertically straight in the air, literally vertically straight in the air.
Okay.
We got also people who can bend their legs all the way back and touch their head with it. What can you guys do that is unique? There's also something called being double jointed that makes it kind of tricky, but people can do some amazing things. When I was at Pioneer, there was a young lady that could take her hands here and bring them all the way back behind her body, literally all the way, still holding hands. I can't do it, so you gotta bear with me, your imagination. All the way behind her body, down here to her backside, and then bring them out underneath her leg and bring them up. Full range of motion on the shoulders. Wow. It was the craziest thing to see. But
double jointed.
It was a combination of true flexibility and being double jointed, because it was just full motion. It was amazing. And you guys can do some pretty crazy things too. I know an example of things that disappear. I used to be able to bring my thumb back and have it all the way touch my forearm. Can't do that anymore, you know. But some of you guys can do all kinds of different crazy things with your fingers and you name it. But all flexibility, all what kind of joints you have, joint structure, etc. Now, getting back to how can we be more flexible, the answer is as easy as pie. But it's not as easy as pie to implement. It is simply stretch. All right? There are two types of stretching. There are dynamic stretches and there are static stretches. A static stretch is very simple. You just reach and hold as far as you can go. Reach and hold. Most of the stretches you guys are used to doing are static stretches. Now, they're great for you. Usually it's best to do them at the end of your exercise. That way your body is warm, and then you stretch and you can get out and go as far as you can. And like Mr. Moore-Hemings has, go when you feel the pain, and then slowly ease a little bit further past the pain. That's the key. But here's the deal. Think of your muscles like a rubber band, all right? Think of it like a rubber band. I think I saw a rubber band right here, but I don't know where it went. But a rubber band, you know what a rubber band is. Has any of you ever tried to grab a rubber band and it ends up being an old rubber band and it's kind of cold, and then you go to pull it? What happens? Boom! It snaps because it's not warm, it's not pliable like it used to be. That's what happens. So when you're stretching, never ever bounce a stretch, all right? You want to stretch into your zone as far as you can go. As soon as you feel like, oh, it's tight there, all right? Pause there for a second, then slowly ease it further just a little bit until you can get as low as you can go, all right? Hold that for 30 seconds, all right? Boom, 1 second is not really doing much, all right? Hold it in there, all right? That will increase your flexibility in whatever muscle you're stretching. How do you stretch a muscle, or how do you know what muscle to stretch? It's as simple as knowing what the muscle does. If you know that the bicep bends the arm at the elbow joint, all right? Well, that's what you're going to have to do in the opposite direction to stretch it. So I can just grab onto something and I can pull, and now my muscle is being loosened in the opposite direction. I can stretch it and hold it, and I feel it right there in my bicep. That's one example, all right? You know that the hamstring bends the leg at the knee joint. So if I want to stretch my hamstring, instead of bending it, I straighten it, and then I put weight on it or put force on it to make it stretch right out of the bottom. Touch your toes. Or if you're laying flat on the ground, touch both toes. Lots of different ways to stretch it, but you got to remember. Now, there are people that take stretching to an extreme, contortionists and such, but there are many people who have been not able to even bend down and touch their knees and have gone on to be doing the splits because they stretch every day. The most popular or most well-known version I can think of is a man named David Goggins. He was a Navy SEAL. He is a ultra marathon runner. He stretches for an hour and a half to 2 hours every night. And he does it in a certain way. And I think it can be beneficial to some of you guys. He sits down, he watches a sports game or a movie, and then while he's watching it, he'll just be on the floor stretching instead of sitting on a couch and watch the movie. Whatever position, goes through all the positions, holds them for a minute or two, switches to the next one, and goes all the way through his whole body. And he's gone from being ultra stiff to very flexible. I also had a good friend of mine who was in martial arts, much like Mr. Mitchell was in martial arts, and was as stiff as a board. But through stretching every day, he got to the point where he could do the splits on with 2 chairs hanging up. He could do the splits in the air. Now, the key to remember is flexibility is not something that's just for showing off or, oh, look, he's flexible because he can bend his arms and legs that way. It is important to the body structure and the spinal structure, bone structure of your body. Right? Your body is supposed to have even balance on the front and the rear. Right? If you do more exercise in the front or more lifting in the front, you neglect your rear, right? What's going to happen is your shoulders are going to start hunching forward. And then you're going to have an unnecessary pull on the back. Your back's going to be hurt. Or it could be the opposite. Maybe you only work pull-ups and do your back, but you don't ever work your front muscles. Well, you can have an imbalance in either direction. But anything that's being, instead of normal, stretched in the wrong direction because you have more strength on one side is going to have some pain here. And have you guys had any injuries or any limitations that come from these flexibility type situations of having imbalance? Mr. Moore-Hemings, Mr. Mitchell?
Well, I know one thing. When Mr. Shoemake talks about, let's use Mr. Shoemake as an example. He's sitting on the side. So when you forget about the proper way to sit, your shoulders come forward. Most people sit like this. It's rounded.
Bad posture.
Bad. What you can do is right in the middle of your back, you want these shoulder blades to meet right here. That's proper posture. But it's going to be a little uncomfortable for you because it's not natural. What's natural is gravity. Won't bend it. What's not is pinch them together. So, having been in this COVID and having to sit so much, I constantly try to remember to pinch the shoulder blades. Pinch the shoulder blades when I'm sitting there, when I'm teaching, I'm trying to pinch the shoulder blades. Now, sometimes I'm like this, though. And I think, I don't want to do that. Pinch the shoulder blades. If you don't stretch your muscle fibers, guys, they will shrink over time, and you don't want that.
No,
so that's something I think about, Mr. Shoemake. Mr. Mitchell, how about you?
Same thing. I think about posture all the time. Because when I walk around, I have a tendency to lean a little bit forward. And you're supposed to have, like you said, pinch your shoulder blades. And that's how you're supposed to be, like at attention when you walk. And so I think about that all the time. All the time. Now, you're pretty flexible. For a guy with your stockiness, it amazes me how flexible you are. And I don't know if you want to show the kids just how flexible you are.
Ooh, Mr. Marhamwig he's a stretching machine.
But he's a stretching machine.
Well, let's see it, Mr. Marhamwig.
Reminds me of that song. He's just a stretching machine. What is it, Mr. Shoemake?
He's just a dance machine. And I won't dance with nobody confused. Let's see, Mr. Marhamwig. Let's see what you got there.
Give the kid an example. Give him the example, Mr. Marhamwig.
So I do. I end my workout usually with the splits. I stretch out a little bit before my workout and warm up. And one way you can remember that, if you took a Tootsie Roll and put it in the freezer, Tootsie Roll in the freezer, boom, left it in for an hour, took the Tootsie Roll back out of the freezer, and you tried to bend it, what would happen? It would just snap. What you got to do, take the Tootsie Roll out of the freezer, which is symbolic of a cold muscle, put it in your hand. And after a couple of minutes, when you go like this, down left and right on each side, it's not going to snap, it's going to flex. It's going to bend. Same thing you want to do with your muscles. So one of the reasons I do the splits at the end, guys, is because up here, it's hard. It hurts. It's mentally hard. It's more mentally difficult than it is physically difficult for me. So I try to win the battle of the mind. So how I start, I call it follow the leader. This is the leader hand. This is the follower. You'll see what I mean. I go to a right stretch like this. And then here's the leader hand. And I go here, 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 here. Then I go left. Then I go to the middle stretch. And this is a great floor to do it because it's slick. And you just go straight down. I try to get to about an inch away from the floor. And that's just about it.
That's not bad. That's very good.
I don't make guarantees, folks, but I guarantee you'll never see Mr. Shoemake doing that.
Exactly.
Well,
I bet you most of the kids can't do that.
Flexibility is important though, guys, especially Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Shoemake. And I will all tell you, as we get older, those muscle fibers, they will shrink if you don't tax them, if you don't stretch them. So, keep it stretching. Mr. Shoemake?
Yeah, absolutely. They're absolutely right. We got to stretch. We got to get all those things in. You know you can stretch. Doing the static stretches is great. You want to try and do those after your workout. You want to get your blood going. At the beginning of your workout to get your muscles nice and loose, you usually want to do what is called a dynamic stretch. A dynamic stretch is basically whatever you're doing. Whatever you're going to do for the day. If you're going to do some squats with weights, like Mr. Shoemake likes to do, well, just do a couple of air squats. All right? We're good at those. We're up to 85 in my class. Some of you guys got great form. Some of you guys are doing this. Don't think Mr. Shoemake doesn't see it. All right? Don't think Mr. Shoemake doesn't see the knee bend. Squat. All right? Hips and knees. Down. Bring it. Now, when you do that a couple times, your blood starts to loosen up. You start to get going. Then you can start putting on the bar, and then 45 pounds, and then another 45. For you guys to be 10 and 10. You know what I'm saying. Go slowly. But
movement.
It is the key. If you're going to be playing a game of soccer, well, we got a lot of soccer players. What do you guys do before practice? Do you just run out in the field and go full blast and kick the ball? No, all right? You probably do a little warm-up lap, and then you probably do maybe some high knees, and then maybe some drills around the cone and get going. You get warmed up first. That's the dynamic warm-up, getting the blood flowing to the areas of the body we're going to be using for that day, and then you go on to do whatever activity is at full bore. But they got a good point. Posture is the key, right? Don't slouch. Try to be erect. Now, here's the deal. Back in the day, they made young ladies walk around with books on their head to make sure they were keeping the proper posture, all right? Now, it's a great thing because it's great for the body. But a lot of us do slouch, and it's terrible for the body, terrible for the spinal alignment. So we got to make sure that we consciously know we're keeping our body in balance and getting everything in action to go, and we make sure our body stays in spinal alignment for the perfect balance of the front and the back of our body, and the less flexibility you have, the more impossible that will be. And trust me, when you realize you are out of balance or you do have a lack of flexibility, especially as you get in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and I don't even want to think about the 70s or 80s, right? If you got an imbalance, it's going to be every day when you wake up in the morning, when you get out of bed. So they tell me. You know, I'm only 50 years away from being 70, so go figure, huh? Mr. Moore-Henley?
One more thing I just want to say, Mr. Shoemaker, turn to the side. Here's a trick too I use. So if move your rear this way a little bit. Now here's something I'm tempted to do every day, Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Shoemaker. Now look at the area right here. You don't want that when you're sitting. Now slide that rear end all the way back. Your rear end should be snug. There's no daylight here. And then boom, shoulder blades back. What are you doing right now as you're watching? What form are you right now? Are you slouched? Are you pinching those shoulder blades? Are you slouched down, your rear end out, or is it snuggled up to the chair? That's a good trick. Snuggle rear end into the chair and pinch those shoulder blades. That's a good trick.
Or are you laying on the ground watching because my camera's off and I'm just here in my bedroom just watching the screen? What are you doing?
What are you doing?
What are you doing? Guys, we know it's good to be physically flexible. But have you, Mr. Shoemaker or Mr. Mitchell, have you ever had to be mentally flexible? Have you ever had a situation in life where you had to be mentally flexible with another person? And please tell us about it. Mr. Mitchell, what do you think?
Always. Relationships are about being mentally flexible. You have an opinion. Your girl, your wife, whoever has an opinion, they don't always be the same. So that's where you have to think about.
No, they don't.
No, exactly. Men are from Mars. So you have to think about their point of view. You have to be mentally flexible. You can't be my way or the highway. And if you're going to have any sort of relationship with anyone, buddies, friends, girlfriends, whatever, you have to be mentally flexible. You have to be. Because no two human beings think exactly the same way.
Not a single two.
So true. Mr. Shoemaker, what do you think?
Well, I have to work next to Mr. Moore-Henley and Mr. Mitchell. So,
Lucky guy.
Lucky guy. I'm pretty flexible. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? No, on a serious note, Mr. Mitchell is absolutely right. No matter if it's your wife or your husband or your mother or your father, you're not going to think the same. You got to be flexible. That's the key thing. But for me, I think that flexibility comes full circle. And I think right now, actually, is probably a test of my flexibility. Not because I want to be some tyrant, but because the things that we are used to doing as instructors and the things that we normally have fun doing with you guys, we can't do. And on top of that, hopefully, some of you guys are going to come back in a month or so. We might have limited options there in the sense of being able to do what we can normally do too. So all the stuff that I like to do that usually ends up being pretty fun because we got a lot of people going and we want to teach you guys to exercise and be healthy with movement and how to enjoy doing it. It's challenging because we have a lot of life that basically happens. And guess what? life doesn't stop happening. What does Mike Tyson say about plans? Everyone's got a plan till they get punched in the mouth. Right? That is a metaphor for life, people.
Yep.
I don't care how well laid your plans are. I don't care how prepared you are for any situation. Life, nature, has a way of saying, oh, you thought that that was going to go just your way? Well, guess what? Boom. Did any of us plan for COVID?
No, big punch in the mouth.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Now, for you guys, 7th grade, it might just stink a little bit. I had to do online school that year. Oh, my goodness. Some of you guys might actually like it. But imagine if you were a senior. We talk about this all the time. If you're a senior, I know I have at least 4 or 5 students who have brothers and sisters who are seniors, just your last year of high school, especially if you're playing baseball or football, or if you played both, and now you don't get to do that because your senior year season, which is supposed to be the best season to prove that you have the stuff to go to college and camaraderie, but it gets cut short because of COVID-19. That's just life. Now, I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's just life. All of us have had examples of having to adapt because life came and said, oh, you thought you were going to do that. Well, why don't we just drop this in your life there? Uh-oh, got to go this way. And you can either fold to the pressure or you can be flexible, keep on pushing.
Thanks for the input, guys. I think that's so important. Put yourself, I think you mentioned it, Mr. Mitchell, put yourself in the other person's shoes. Something of that nature, he said. So I think it's important to try to seek to understand before being understood. Now, there's an art and science to doing that. It's a science in that certain rules apply when you're trying to be mentally flexible. It's an art that the more you practice it, the better you get at it. I've disagreed with both these guys about politics or religion or other social issues. We agree on most things, but there's some things I'm passionate about, he's passionate about, but we disagree in our passions. But guess what? We're sitting here making videos together because we care about one another. We love each other more than we love being right. That doesn't mean we still don't disagree, but we're mentally flexible. And we come together on common cause issues like making videos, producing content for our students. So be mentally flexible. Stay physically flexible, but be mentally flexible as well. Switching gears. Sports Factor, what do you got for us?
Staying with flexibility, staying with gymnastics, switching to the men.
Yeah.
Who holds the most gold medals for men's gymnastics in the United States? And who holds the most in the world? And is it the same? Is the person who holds the most for the United States also the world leader?
Nice.
Oh, well, we're going to go a little bit different with this one because gymnastics is such a global sport. So I'm going to ask you, what is the capital city of the country whose men hold the most gold medals?
Nice. Nice. Well, guys, I asked my personal trainer if he could help me to learn how to do splits. And he said, well, how flexible are you? And I said, well, I'm free next Tuesday. Yeah. Here's another principle for you guys. Devotion defines. Think about those 2 words. Devotion defines. What you're devoted to will define you. What's most important to you will define you. Here's a question for you too. Is when someone says, Mr. Shoemake, what do they think about? You know what I think about when I think about Mr. Shoemake? Push. Mr. Shoemake, I'm not sure if my class or Mr. Mitchell's class has heard what PUSH stands for. Can you just talk about that a moment to make sure they understand why we're saying push at the end of these videos?
Absolutely. We push. It's a double entendre. We push because we want you to push hard every day, but we want to push because we want to practice unity, sportsmanship, and health, all right? And that's what we do every day in Shoe Time land, and especially in person. We practice unity, togetherness as a team, one big happy family, all right? Sportsmanship, all right? You don't look, I work with these guys every day. We don't get along all the time. We don't ever not get along to the point of fighting, but we don't get along and have the same minds every single day. But that's sportsmanship. If you win a game, you don't have to be, you suck. No, you suck, Johnny. Right? No, hey, Johnny, we'll get him next time. Easy as that. I have good sportsmanship. And the overarching thing that we want you to learn out of here for the rest of your life is good health.
Good health.
Practice unity, sportsmanship, and health. Push, baby.
Indeed. When I think of Mr. Mitchell, I look at his classes. You know, I usually teach 8th grade. Mr. Mitchell, you've been teaching 7th for a long time. You've been teaching 8th for a long time. Sometimes we have combined schedules, like maybe 7th and 8th. It's always interesting getting Mr. Mitchell's students, because I'll say when we're doing weightlifting, they're doing bench press, and they got it down. It's impressive. I don't have a lot to teach them. They know all the basic fundamentals. And I say, well, who do you have for 7th grade PE? Oh, Mr. Mitchell. So when I think of Mr. Mitchell, I think of a class that is organized. And one way he organizes it is he will get people in their attention by whistling. When I think of Mr. Mitchell, I think of organization. And to get everyone organized, he uses the whistle. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard him whistle. I think you have. But that's what I think about. That's kind of what defines him. Organizational skills, and he brings all that together with the whistle. Mr. Shoemaker's push. What are you? What are you? Let's get a little personal. What defines you? You say, well, I'm only 12 or 13, Mr. M. Yeah, you are. But if this was it, this is your last day living, and that's not going to be, hopefully, and live about another 60, 70, 80 years, hopefully, but if it was, what would people remember you for? What were you devoted to? Because that's what will define you. That's what will define you. All right? So, I'm done talking about definitions in terms of being defined by devotion.
You mean devotion?
You're done with devotion?
I'm done. That's all I have to say.
You need devotion. You need devotion. Bless the children.
There's the whistle.
What's going on here?
Well, we're still building healthy relationships.
What's the purpose of our art?
HR squared.
Honesty, respect, responsibility. All right. As we said, practice unity, sportsmanship, and health. Keep on pushing. All right. Top to the bottom. Try to be a better you today than you were yesterday. Just a little bit. Keep on pushing. 1, 2, 3.